No physical evidence of God and his domain. Part 1 of my proof: God does not exist. If there really was a God, what would you expect? Well, for one thing, I would have expected that science would have validated the existence of God and related supernatural phenomena by now. Now don't take this as some pompous scientific hand-waving. You don't have something that interacts with our bodies and minds and not have some obvious impact in the physical world, at least at the molecular/atomic level. The problem is that, if God existed in the way most theists tend to imply, you would not expect it to be some weak subtle influence but something rather spectacular and widespread, at least, as compared to our current understanding of subatomic particles and quantum mechanics. I know many theists say, wait a minute, you can't know God's nature. God is beyond our understanding, and God is supernatural, beyond nature. Why? Most of the things we know of science would have been considered supernatural a few hundred years ago. Sort of by definition, anything we cannot directly or indirectly measure or test, we would have to classify as supernatural. But what we know is not constant, it builds upon itself. Especially under science, mankind has been able to come to an understanding of a substantial portion of his environment. I would have guessed that the existence of supernatural events happening in the natural world would have become obvious to science in the last 100 years. I can already hear some of you saying, we will never be able to figure out God. But that, I suspect, is just wishful thinking among many of you theists, because you know that through knowledge comes resolution and answers to question too many people say they already have the answer. The problem with believing in the supernatural, it still takes its impact on the natural world for you to know it exists. Even if all we can see is the results like molecules moving, chemical process initiated, and electrical energy transferred, we should be able to observe, measure, and test it in a scientific way. Moreover, how it impacts at the subatomic level should give us insights into how it relates to our universe and our more conventional physics. With our human capacity to understand and some physical evidence to work from, we could determine the nature of heaven, if it existed. So let's look at the soul or spirit. Just about every mythology claims we have some part of us that is persistent after death. Whether it goes to heaven or is reincarnated in another life, it is supposed to be some part of us. Many a Christian claim the soul is actually where our consciousness lies, but I doubt very few have ever thought through what that really means. Unless the soul is completely passive, only reading what our mind thinks and does, the soul must be able to interact and mostly create thought within our body independent of the rest of our neurological system. But thought is not a simple electronic signal like some piece of a computer program. And like computers, the brain is not some fixed set of processors in which instructions are inputted and processed. No two brains are exactly the same. The brain grows its processors, brain cells, as the body grows, that is brain cells, gray matter continue to grow up to late teens and the interconnectivity, white matter, until early 30s, and as such are influenced by the experiences of the human. Sensory inputs, touch, smell, sight, taste, hearing, are physically mapped into areas of the brain's gray matter multiple times, and memory and thought are also similarly distributed. Moreover, there does not appear to be a common language or operating system, as in computers, but rather the electrochemical interactions and physical structure of the brain are what defines the contextual and relational aspects of our thoughts. For the soul or spirit to interact with the mind, it would have to be able to interpret the neurological signals and translate them into meaningful representation the soul understands. And conversely, the soul needs to be able to take whatever thoughts/command/memories it wants to send back to our bodies and map them back into the chaotic structures which is our brains. While there are potentially learning methods that could do this, but from a design point of view it's not very intelligent. More significantly to my argument, from an interface point of view, it would be humongous. If the soul was in communication with the brain on any continuous manner, the amount of information and energy should be spectacular on the molecular level. The brain should be saturated with these soul-to-body messages, and they would all appear to come out of nowhere. And with each and every thought generated by our consciousness, we should be able to see a change in the physical universe that can't be explained by our current science. Now some may say, well, quantum mechanics is pretty strange. Maybe that's where the interactions of the soul lies, but in all our research we have never been able to find a quantum level effect that is associated with life, let alone intelligence. There is nothing in science that would imply that there is any type of interaction able to support a soul, and based on what we currently know we probably should have discovered it, if it existed. Another thing that the concept of a soul does very poorly is predict how the damaged mind works. If our consciousness were in the soul, then why would physical damage to the brain change our conscious mind? How could mental activities ever just stop, if the soul is constantly talking to it and generating thoughts? Much like the soul, many other things we call supernatural would have a very distinct physical impact on our world. Things like ghost, psychic abilities, miracles, stigmata, talking in tongue, etc. would all leave some physical trail that physics should be able to find. People claim that they see, hear, feel and even witnessed physical manifestation, stuff moving and breaking, by ghosts, but their claims and evidence is always lacking. I'm not talking about the kind of bogus electromagnetic interference effects that they show on TV Ghost Hunter show. We live in a world saturated with electromagnetic interference effects, but we have always been able to identify a source in the real world, if you look hard enough. If their claims were true and ghosts really did exist and generate EMI, then ghosts, being mobile and intelligent, would almost universally play havoc with all the electronics. Electronic chips would have to be ghost-proofed for them to be reliable, and we should be able to easily detect them. More significantly, since ghosts are supposed to be humans, and you would expect that they would be trying to communicate with us, just as some of us claim to try to talk to them. Wouldn't you expect some nerdy ghost to writing their name across the CCD collectors, the electronics that records light, in telescopes, day after day? Don't you think some enterprising ghost would be sending its images through television signals rather than just the cameras of ghost hunters? If these supernatural realms existed and had some interaction with our universe, science would know it and be studying it. If they existed, there would be new formal branch of science pulling together physics, biology, cosmology, genetics, and others to come to understand it. You would have large research project looking at how the humans interact with this supernatural world, their souls on a subatomic level, examining the intricacies of how our physical bodies communicate with the soul, how much energy is transferred back and forth between the God's dimension/realm/state and ours in the process. What is the makeup of this other realm, gods, angels, demons, souls, ghost, etc., and what is the nature of this relationship, parasitic/symbiotic? How did it physically come into being? Did God actually create it, or did He just build upon what was already there? You would expect physicists would be trying to develop super unified theories in which they try to work out how the physics in God's realm relates to our own unified theories, and there would be a whole discipline of science trying to determine what God was up to, His intentions and desires. If there really was a God, it would be scientists leading way to understand God's nature, but that is not the reality we live in.